Ash Gentle, 5 minutes 30 down into T2. What were you thinking?
Maybe I can be on the podium, and yeah, that's about it. It was a huge task ahead of me, but I was pretty glad to get off the bike and onto the run, and I'm glad my legs felt decent when I was running out. I was cramping a bit actually in T2, and that's never happened before, so there's a bit of conflicting messages going on in my brain, but just wanted to get out there and see what I could do.
And did you know early that you were onto something special?
No, no, definitely not. Like after the bit of cramping and once I got out of transition, I guess I got my cadence up pretty quickly and I was able to hit a decent pace fairly early, but I just didn't really know how I was faring compared to the other girls, and I just wanted to make sure I could try and focus on myself because mentally I was battling a bit on the swim and the bike, and I needed to really regroup and make sure I stayed focused.
Take me inside that when you say you were battling mentally on the swim and the bike. What was happening?
Yeah, I guess the first lap of the swim was quite bad. I started far right, but a group of girls from my left kind of swamped me really early on, so I tried to go right just to find clear water and not get caught up in anything. So I was a bit in no man's land, and then the second lap was really good because I was able to swim back up to Indy Lee, but I think it took a bit out of me just, after a pretty bad first lap. And then, on the bike, I guess my power was a bit lower than last year. I felt a lot hotter than last year. I shouldn't have compared it to last year. I think I was getting caught up in my head a bit, and there was times where it was just really difficult. So I think that for me, I just had to make sure I refocused a number of times just to stay on task and to stay focused and keep my head in the game. And I guess that's part of racing, but especially in these hard conditions, you've always got a chance, and I just tried to remind myself that all day.
Because you can see where everyone's at in the race, particularly on the bike, you sort of get those out and back sections where you can eye each other. Early on, you weren't that far behind the Lucy's when you were eyeing them. Could you tell how far ahead of you they were? Like, did you have a rough idea of like the amount of time you were losing on the bike?
I had one or two people give me a few splits on the bike, so this year I was actually able to know an approximate time gap, and it wasn't great when that gap is blowing out, and mentally that's also really difficult. I'm sure for both the Lucy's it's great, you feel good, you're in the lead, you're getting good time splits to me and the rest of the field. But reverse that for me, it was just like, oh, this is really tough, this is getting a bit depressing. But that's where you really have to be mentally strong and not just give up. You have to be, you don't know how they're suffering compared to how you are, and you just have to back that you're making the right decisions. And sometimes that is really tough when you're not getting the splits that you want. But thankfully I was able to reverse that on the run, and that really lifted me.
When that group came up to you of Imogen Simmons, Indy Lee, Lucy Byram, was that a positive for you, or were you like, oh, they've caught me, this is making my day harder?
It was an interesting one because I kind of thought to myself the first few laps, and I shouldn't have had such a fast T1. I should have just ridden with those girls. Maybe it would have made such a big difference just to have people around me, mentally, because being in that position solo when I was hurting, it wasn't very nice. It wasn't enjoyable at all. And I think when Indy Lee overtook me briefly, it gave me a kick in the butt that I needed and really kind of fired me up. But then she took one of the corners a lot slower than I was, so I kind of went into her drafting zone. So I knew I had to make the pass. I was very close. So I actually turned to her and I said, I really didn't want to pass you, but I had to. I knew that I had to make that pass, and then she never repassed me, and I actually then got a gap on that group again. So it was really strange. I rode for them for all of 1 or 2 minutes, and then I was back by myself. So it was a really strange dynamic.
And then what about when Els Visser came up with you? Did you sort of have to put in a surge to go with her, or did you just let her go and ride your own tempo?
I didn't really have many surges in me this year. Last year I definitely was able to be a bit more explosive on the bike and attack the hills a bit more, and I felt like when I did say pass Lucy last year, I had that extra gear. This year, I just really tried to stay controlled, and Els was riding incredibly strong. She had a phenomenal ride, and I didn't even try to go with her. I just tried to make sure that I didn't blow too many matches, because I knew if I did anything stupid on that last lap, it could really jeopardize the rest of my race if I just dug too deep.
And now coming back to the run, so as it progressed, in the first kilometre you took 28 seconds out of Lucy Charles. Did you know that at the time, or at what point did you realise, okay, this is actually doable, I can win this race?
I honestly only thought that it was doable once I had her in my sights. But obviously before that, it is a really good thing as an athlete on course when you are getting those splits that are coming down, and they started to come down quite significantly. But the interesting thing is that you could tell the people that maybe were rooting for Lucy, maybe rooting for me, or just had different time splits, because sometimes I got, like 4 minutes, the next person would say 5, and then when it got really close, some people would say it's 50 seconds, the next person would say a minute 15. And in my mind, I'm like, these time gaps are a pretty big difference. So I relied on the people that I knew that would be mostly telling me the truth, like my husband, Josh. So I knew that he would be accurate in his split. So I just, waited till I got to him, and he was getting pretty fired up. He was getting excited, and I was like, okay, maybe I have a chance.
And so you had a little bit of cramping in T2, you were 5.5 minutes down, you didn't feel great when you left T2. At what point, if ever, did you start to feel good?
I think when I crossed the line and I was like, thank God that's over. It was a really difficult race, but of course, the second lap of the swim was actually quite good for me. I felt like I could get my rhythm, and I was really happy I could. It's never nice to be 1 minute 40 down coming out of the water, but that's to Lucy Buckingham and Lucy Charles Barclay and Rebecca Clark. So you got to put that into context. I knew that there's always going to be a gap to those women, but the second lap, I'm glad I was able to find my own water and actually swim strong to get back up to the people that I wanted to be with. That was a positive. Of course, there was times on the bike and the run too, I definitely felt like I was finding my groove, but it was more so probably the last 2 laps on the bike, and then definitely, throughout the run, I could keep my cadence up. The first 2 laps were really great, and then once I caught Lucy and overtook her, I was just like, okay, just get me to the finish line as fast as I could.
With the run, do you think that your run was just out of this world amazing, or do you think that you just had a pretty standard run, and because it was so brutal, everyone else was struggling?
I think that, I handled the conditions quite well, and obviously paced the whole race quite well. I think that's a big factor too, because of course, if I made different decisions on the bike, I'm not sure if I could, but I just tried to do what I thought was possible. I didn't want to do anything too crazy, and obviously other athletes make different decisions based on their strengths, and that could come back to bite them on the run. And maybe that happened to a couple of girls, but I think my pacing was just quite good. I don't think it was a particularly fast run. It was probably my slowest ever 18K run, but you've got to put into context probably the time of year, the conditions obviously, and it was definitely a slower run than last year, I think, but different circumstances, different conditions, different day, different dynamics, so who cares about the time, right? It's the first person across the line.
You won yesterday the way you did in the end, pretty impressively really, and I know you're modest and won't say that. Taylor Knibb won by 15 minutes at Oceanside. Do you think that you two keep tabs on each other?
Oh, I definitely saw what she did in Oceanside. It was in the middle of the night in Australia, but I woke up and saw her dominating performance, and I said to Josh, I'm like, did you see what Taylor Knibb did? Like, of course I noticed these things, but to be honest, it's not really a surprise for me. I've known Taylor Knibb for a very long time now. We've raced together numerous times, especially when she was a young athlete on this short course circuit, and I know how strong she is. She's an incredible athlete, so much raw power and talent. So yeah, I'm sure she watches the races too. She's very switched on, Taylor Knibb, so she knows what's going on.
And you beat Lucy Charles-Barclay yesterday. You beat the new Indy Lee. Probably add her to the group of big five now. Does it excite you to get to race Arnie Haug and Taylor Knibb and get a chance to, maybe beat them?
Yeah, of course. I think it's going to be a super exciting year. There's been, a few people miss the first couple of races of the season, but that only means that the odds get greater that we all see each other later in the year, right? So that's an exciting prospect. And, yesterday or right now, I'm not really thinking of trying to take down Anna or Taylor. Like I'm pretty tired and I'm pretty sore, but of course, once I recover from this and regroup, of course, I'm going to be super motivated. I feel like I am really proud of what I did yesterday, but I do think I've got so much more to give, and I've got a lot of more fitness and race fitness especially to gain throughout the year. And when Anna and Taylor join the circuit, plus a few other girls, I'm going to have to be at A+ form to try and contend with those ladies.
Ash Gentle, first T100 race of the year, first win of the year. Well done. Can't wait for San Fran.
Thank you.